The house was quiet in the late evening, a calm that felt almost unusual for the Nowhere House family. Mary Ann sat at the kitchen table, phone in hand, scrolling through notes. She took a deep breath before dialing. "Hey," she said softly when Paul answered. "I've been thinking about a boy at the group home. Michael. He's in Eli's class at school." "Michael? Oh, yeah. I think Eli mentioned him," Paul replied, his voice warm but curious. "What about him?" "He's unhappy," Mary Ann said, pausing. "Really struggling. I think he could use a safe place, even for just a short while. Maybe we could foster him for a couple of weeks while his foster parents are away." Paul leaned back in his chair, thinking. "A temporary stay, huh? That makes sense. But Eli doesn't know, right?" "Not a clue," she said, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "I want it to be a surprise for him. We'll tell him it's only for a short time." "All right," Paul said, his tone gentle but decisive. "Let's do it." It wasn't the first time the family had taken in a new child. Usually, there was a family meeting. Everyone got a chance to speak, to share their feelings, to say if they were ready. It helped the children feel respected, heard, and prepared for the changes another sibling would bring. But Michael was different. This time, Eli would only find out when the boy walked through the front door. Eli had expected a normal morning, cereal, toast, and the usual chatter from his siblings. What he didn't expect was Paul walking into the kitchen with a boy he knew from his class, a backpack slung over one shoulder. "Dad," Eli said, blinking. "Why is Michael here?" Paul grinned sheepishly. "Morning. Thought I'd surprise everyone. Michael's staying with us for a little while." Eli's heart skipped a beat. He knew Michael from school, knew him to be quiet and withdrawn, but he hadn't expected him in their kitchen, especially not at 6 a.m. His mind raced. Mary Ann poured a cup of juice for Michael and smiled warmly at Eli. "He's only going to be here a couple of weeks," she explained. His foster parents, a young couple in another city, had to delay their return from vacation. "So we're helping out temporarily." Michael, clutching his backpack, tried to smile. He had been looking forward to a foster placement far away, somewhere quiet, a city that might finally feel like home. Instead, he was in a house brimming with children he didn't know except for Eli, of course. The breakfast table had already started to stir. "Michael," Mary Ann said, gesturing, "these are our children. Eli, who you obviously know, Mark, Nevaeh, Emily, David, Hallie, and Lacey." Mark, perched on the lower bunk beside David, waved excitedly. "Hi. I'm Mark. That's David over there. Welcome." David nodded with a grin. "It's loud, but it's fun. You'll see." Then came the twins, Nevaeh and Emily, approaching side by side. Their identical expressions made it clear immediately they were twins. "Hi, Michael," Nevaeh said, tilting her head. "I'm Nevaeh, and this is Emily, we're twins." Emily added softly, "We like to help new kids feel at home. If you want, you can stay in our room a night or two, just so it's not so lonely." Hallie smiled from across the table. "I'm Hallie, 9 years old. Don't worry, it's usually fun, even when it's noisy." "And I'm Lacey," added the oldest of the girls, 10. "You'll get used to it fast." Eli watched silently, trying not to show how surprised he was. Deep down, he wished this stay could last longer than a couple of weeks, even though he knew, or thought he knew, that Michael would only be there temporarily. Eli tapped the bench beside, "Come sit here." Michael took a cautious step forward, glancing around at the energetic household. He tried to imagine himself in this chaos for just a short while. But even as he thought that, part of him wondered if maybe, just maybe, he could belong here for longer. He moved forward and sat next to Eli. Breakfast passed in its normal chaos and the trip to school was busy in a crazy way as it normally was. The school day passed as it usually did. After school, when Eli and Michael arrived home, they went upstairs to see Michael's room. It had a blue duvet with superheroes on it, similar to Eli's. Also, there was a desk by the window with his things brought from the group home. "Hope you like it," Marianne said as she passed the doorway. "We can change it if you don't." Michael turned to look at Marianne. "It's perfect," he said. Eli gave the mandatory tour of the house as he did with all the new kids, showing him the yard, the pool, the quiet space at the far back corner where a pagoda was with a bench. Eli explained that this was a safe place where he could sit in quiet or scream if he wanted to, or even cry, but of course boys don't cry, well, unless you have to. "The rules are simple. If you or anyone sits here, no one is allowed to bother you, unless they announce themselves, of course, but you have the say to tell them to leave and they have to listen." Eli arranged for pizza for supper as usual with the arrival of a new kid, even though he had tried to insist on ordering pizza for breakfast that morning, only to find out to his disbelief the pizza shop was closed. That evening the house went through its normal crazy routines of supper and cartoons and the odd forgotten homework that Eli insisted everyone help with if they could, because he believed in homework to fill in cracks. The next morning, the house buzzed with the usual activity: shoes clicking on the hallway floor, backpacks slung over shoulders, and the low hum of children chatting about plans for the day. Michael followed Eli to the bus stop, his backpack feeling heavier than usual. He kept his gaze down, unsure what to expect. The thought of a new school day in a new house made him anxious, even though he had been in this class for a year. "Hey," Eli said softly as they walked together. "Don't worry. I've got your back." Michael glanced up, a small flicker of relief passing across his face. "Thanks," he muttered. At school, most of the students were absorbed in their morning routines. Michael slipped into his usual seat quietly, trying not to draw attention. But Eli, sitting beside him, kept checking in, a subtle nudge, a whispered joke, anything to make the day a little easier. During lunch, Eli caught Michael glancing down the hall toward the playground. He could tell the boy wanted to be somewhere else, somewhere quieter. "You can sit with me and the others today," Eli offered, nodding toward a small group of classmates. "It's not as scary as it seems." Michael hesitated, then nodded. A small, tentative smile appeared, the first sign that maybe he could belong here, at least a little. When the school bell rang, Michael walked home with Eli, carrying his backpack in a more relaxed way than that morning. The streets were quiet, and the warmth of the sun made the walk feel longer but safer. Back at the house, the twins were busy in their room with dolls, laughing quietly to themselves. Michael set down his backpack in his room, already noticing the small changes that made the house feel welcoming: the superhero duvet, the neatly stacked books, and Eli's note on the dresser, a simple welcome written in bold letters. Later, the living room became their gathering spot. Michael sank onto the couch beside Eli, watching a cartoon flicker across the television. It was loud, chaotic in some ways, but not unpleasant. He could hear the faint giggles of the twins from their room, the clatter of Mark and David playing a game nearby, and the distant hum of Marianne in the kitchen. Eli nudged him lightly. "See? Not so bad, huh?" Michael offered a quiet, tentative smile. "Yeah," he said. "Not so bad." It was the first small victory of many to come. The day had started with uncertainty, with the weight of expectations for a faraway foster placement. But now, in this bright, noisy house, Michael felt a flicker of something he hadn't felt in a long time, a possibility of belonging. Eli, watching him from the couch, silently hoped that the couple of weeks' promise might, somehow, stretch into something longer. That night, after everyone else had gone to bed and the house had quieted down, Michael lay in his bed staring at the ceiling. The soft hum of the refrigerator, the faint creaks of the floorboards, and the distant whispers of his siblings slowly faded into a comforting background. He thought about the foster placement he had been expecting, a quiet house far away, maybe in another city or even a different state. A place where he had imagined everything would finally feel perfect. And yet, he couldn't help but think of this house, this noisy, chaotic, warm house. Eli's quiet presence the first night, the laughter of Mark and David, the twins' giggles echoing down the hallway earlier, somehow, it had started to feel like home. Michael sighed, a small smile tugging at his lips. He knew he would miss it. He knew he would miss Eli, the way the boy had looked out for him, even when Michael hadn't asked. He couldn't help but wonder, maybe, just maybe, if something went wrong with the foster placement. If by some miracle it fell through, could he stay here? Could he really belong with this crazy, wonderful family? With that thought tucked in the back of his mind, Michael finally let his eyes close. The soft comfort of the bed, the faint warmth of the house, and the quiet hope in his heart carried him into sleep. When Michael awoke the next morning, he blinked against the sunlight streaming through the window. He stretched and glanced over, expecting to see the empty bed where Eli had been the night before. But instead, two small figures lay there, side by side. Nevaeh and Emily, the twins, were fast asleep, their identical faces peaceful in the morning light. Michael's eyes went wide. "Wait, what?" he whispered, a mixture of surprise and amusement coloring his voice. Nevaeh stirred, opening one eye. "Good morning, Michael," she said softly. "We thought you might want some company." "Don't worry, you're not alone." Emily yawned and added, "It's our thing with new kids. We just make sure they feel at home." Michael stared for a moment, still processing the surprise. Then, a small smile spread across his face. The house might be loud. It might be chaotic. But somehow, it was starting to feel like a place he belonged. Paul had memorized the routine. He pulled into the parking lot of their school. Michael already knew the routine. Therapist first. Cafe after. It was the one constant in a life that rarely stayed still. The session itself passed quietly. Michael talked more than he used to, about school, about Eli, about how loud the house was and how strange it felt to miss the noise when it wasn't there. He didn't say the words "I don't want to leave," but they sat heavy in the room anyway. Paul waited like he always did, not asking questions that didn't need answers. They slid into a booth by the window, trays between them. Michael unwrapped his burger slowly, already sensing something different in the air. Paul took a sip of his drink, then said gently, "So, tomorrow morning." Michael's hands paused. "They're coming early," Paul continued. "Your foster parents. The couple from out of state." Michael nodded, staring at the table. "Yeah. Mom told me." Silence stretched. "They seem nice," Paul added carefully. "From what we've been told." Michael swallowed. "I was hoping maybe they'd cancel again." Paul didn't answer right away. Michael forced a small smile. "I know. It's dumb. This was never supposed to be permanent." Paul leaned back, studying him, not as a case, not as paperwork, just as a kid sitting across from him. "It's not dumb," he said quietly. "It means you care." Michael's voice dropped. "Eli's gonna take it hard." Paul nodded. "He will." Michael picked at his fries. "I am too." That was the most honest thing he'd said all day. Paul reached across the table and nudged Michael's tray closer. "Eat. Big morning tomorrow." Michael did, but the food tasted like goodbye. That evening, the smell of pizza filled the house, but the mood was off. Everyone knew it. The kids crowded around the dining room table, boxes stacked in the middle. Eli sat stiffly beside Michael, knee bouncing under the table. No one joked. Even Mark and David were quiet. Mary Ann folded her hands. Paul stood at the head of the table. "All right, we need to talk about tomorrow." Eli's jaw tightened. Paul continued, steady and calm. "Michael's foster parents are coming in the morning to take him to their home." Emily frowned. Nevaeh stared at the table. Eli finally snapped, "You said it was only a couple weeks. You didn't say it'd feel like this." Michael stared straight ahead, heart pounding. Paul nodded once. "You're right. We didn't." He took a breath. "And that's because there's something you all need to know." The room went very still. Paul glanced at Marianne. She nodded. He turned back to the kids. There are no foster parents coming tomorrow. Eli blinked. What? Michael looked up sharply. What do you mean? Paul's voice didn't waver. We made it up. Silence. For 2 weeks, Paul continued, you've been living with your foster parents. Michael's brain stalled. No, with them, Marianne said softly. This house. This family. Eli shot to his feet. You're lying. Paul shook his head. No. We wanted to give Michael space. Choice. We didn't want him to feel trapped or pressured. Michael's chest felt tight. So. I'm not leaving. Paul met his eyes. Only if you want to. The room exploded. Eli spun toward Michael, disbelief giving way to something fierce and relieved. You're staying? Michael's voice cracked. I don't have to go. Emily squealed. Nevaeh clapped a hand over her mouth, eyes shining. Mark let out a loud yes. David grinned like it was the best prank ever pulled. Michael looked around the table, faces he hadn't let himself fully claim. You mean, he said slowly, I'm home. Marianne stood and crossed the room, resting a hand on his shoulder. If you choose us, yes. Michael didn't answer right away. Then Eli stepped closer, voice low. Please stay. Michael breathed in. Then out, I want to stay. That was all it took. Eli didn't think. He just moved. He wrapped his arms around Michael and held on like he was afraid the moment might disappear if he let go. Michael froze for half a second, then hugged him back just as tightly. Eli's voice broke anyway. Welcome home, bro. Michael pressed his face into Eli's shoulder, nodding because words weren't working anymore. Around them, the house erupted, cheers, pizza boxes sliding, the twins hugging each other, Mark pounding the table like they'd just won something big. Paul let out a breath he'd been holding for weeks. Marianne wiped her eyes and smiled through it. And just like that, Michael wasn't the foster kid anymore. He was family. Life settled into something close to normal over the next few weeks. Michael stopped counting days. Eli stopped bracing for goodbye. They argued about dumb things, raced down the hallway, stayed up too late whispering across their beds. Michael learned which cabinet held the snacks, which sibling to avoid before breakfast, and that Nevaeh was usually the first to notice when someone was pretending they were okay. It was on one of those ordinary evenings, pizza again, because pizza solved most things, that Marianne asked everyone to sit down. Paul stayed standing. The kids exchanged looks. Here we go, they all though in unison. There's a boy Sally told Mom about at work. Michael felt Eli stiffen beside him, not fear this time, just awareness. He's 6, Marianne said. His name is Josh. She paused, choosing her words carefully. He's very quiet. He's having a hard time. Especially at school. Emily leaned forward. Like, lonely hard. Marianne nodded. Yes. Paul added, we want to talk about whether we're ready to bring him here. This time, it wasn't a surprise. Eli glanced at Michael, then back at his parents. Does he know about us? Not yet. Marianne said. But he knows we're a big family. Michael pictured a small, quiet kid walking into this loud house. His chest tightened because he remembered exactly what that felt like. He can take my old blanket, Michael said suddenly. The blue one. It helps. The twins smiled at each other. Paul looked around the table, pride flickering across his face. So, are we ready? No one answered right away. But no one said no. The morning air was crisp as Paul guided Michael and Hallie toward the car. Today, Paul said, we're going to bring Josh home. He glanced at Michael, who was already scanning the neighborhood like he did whenever something unfamiliar happened. I want you two to come with me. Michael nodded. Hallie, sitting in the back, bounced slightly in anticipation. "Does he know us?" she asked. "No," Paul said. "And that's okay. He might feel a little scared. That's why I like taking one of you along. Makes it a little less intimidating." Michael felt a twinge in his chest. He remembered his first day, how big the hallways had felt and how much courage it had taken just to step inside. The car ride was quiet, filled with occasional directions from the GPS and a few whispered jokes between Michael and Hallie to ease the tension. Michael couldn't stop thinking about the little boy they were going to meet. Would he cry? Hide? Or just quietly watch like a shadow? When they pulled up at the CPS office, Paul parked and took a deep breath. "Remember," he said, "this is his first day. Be calm. Be kind. Don't overwhelm him." Michael adjusted his backpack and nodded. He felt ready, not just for the ride home, but for the responsibility of showing Josh that maybe, just maybe, this crazy family could be a safe place to belong. The CPS office smelled faintly of cleaning spray and paper, but it wasn't unpleasant. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, and the low murmur of staff filtered through the room. Paul led Michael and Hallie toward a small corner where a child sat alone, hugging a worn backpack to his chest. His tiny frame seemed to shrink into the chair, shoulders tense. "This is Josh," Paul said softly. Michael and Hallie glanced at him, noticing the fear in the boy's eyes. Sally stepped forward, giving a warm smile. "Josh, I've been looking after your case," she said gently. "This is my office, but today, we're going to help you start somewhere new." Josh flinched slightly. His former foster parents hadn't wanted him. T. Hay thought there was something wrong with being quiet. He had learned long ago that loud and happy were safe, and being himself was risky. Michael crouched down, keeping his voice soft. "Hi, Josh. I'm Michael. This is Hallie. We're going to ride home with you. Don't worry, it's okay to be quiet." Josh's eyes peeked out from behind the backpack, unsure if this was another trick or if these kids were really safe. Hallie knelt beside him. "Hi, Josh. You like cars? There's a really cool one outside. You can look at it when we walk out." A tiny nod. That was all it took. Paul extended a hand slowly, kneeling to Josh's level. "It's okay. You can sit next to Michael, and Hallie can sit across. We'll take it slow. Are you ready to go?" Josh shuffled to his feet, still clutching the backpack, but after a hesitant pause, he took Michael's hand. A small step, but a huge one for him. The car ride was quiet, but it wasn't tense. Michael and Hallie kept up a soft stream of chatter, pointing out trees, funny license plates, and dogs on the sidewalks. Josh didn't speak, but he didn't hide behind his backpack anymore. Michael glanced back at him. "You're doing great," he whispered. Josh's eyes met his briefly, a flicker of trust forming. Hallie nudged him gently. "See? Not so scary." Josh let out a tiny laugh, barely audible, but real. Paul glanced in the rear-view mirror. "That's all we ask. Small steps." By the time they pulled into the driveway, Josh's backpack was tucked beside him in the seat. His eyes widened at the house, curious but cautious. For the first time in a long while, someone had welcomed him simply as he was, quiet, shy, and nervous, and it felt like maybe, just maybe, he could belong. The smell of pizza filled the house again. Eli had ordered extra, rich and comforting. Michael, Eli, Hallie, Lacey, and the twins were already seated around the table, nibbling on slices and chatting quietly. For this family, pizza nights had come to mean one thing: a new kid was joining the household. Paul held the last box of pizza carefully in his hands. "All right, everyone," he said, voice calm but carrying the excitement of the occasion. "We have someone very special to meet tonight." From the doorway, Mary Ann led a small, quiet figure. Josh clutched his backpack, eyes wide, surveying the chaos around the table. The noise, the laughter, the clatter of plates, it all seemed to press in on him at once. Paul knelt to Josh's level. "Hey, Josh. This is your new home. For now. Everyone here is going to be part of your family, but you don't have to do anything you don't want to. If you want quiet, that's okay. You can sit in your room and close the door, or sit on the bench under the pagoda in the backyard, or even soak in the bath. The other kids will respect your space." Josh's shoulders relaxed slightly. He hadn't been given permission like that before. Eli leaned forward gently. "Hi, Josh. I'm Eli. If you want, I can show you around later. Or we can just sit here and eat." Hallie added softly, "You don't have to talk if you don't want to. Just eat your pizza. We're glad you're here." Lacey gave him a small wave. "Hi, Josh. You'll like it here. We can all show you where stuff is." The twins, Emily and Nevaeh, nodded in unison. "And if you ever want company, or just quiet, we'll figure it out," Nevaeh said. Josh finally managed a tiny smile and nodded, still holding onto his backpack. Paul straightened and opened the pizza box. "See? Pizza night is always a little loud at first, but it's how we welcome new friends. You'll find your spot soon enough." Josh chose a seat at the corner of the table, close enough to see the others but far enough to feel safe. As he took a small slice of pizza, he felt a strange warmth inside, something he hadn't felt with previous foster families, the sense that being quiet, being himself, was okay. Around him, the kids continued talking, laughing, and joking. And for the first time in a long while, Josh realized that maybe, just maybe, he could belong here too. After pizza, the kids helped clear the table while Josh stayed seated, nibbling on the last slice and observing the flurry of activity. The house was noisy, Michael and Eli joking back and forth, the twins rearranging dolls in their room, Lacey and Hallie tidying up the kitchen. Josh shifted uncomfortably in his chair, wishing for some quiet. Paul noticed immediately. He crouched beside Josh. "Remember, you don't have to be part of everything," he said softly. "If you want to take a break, that's okay. You can go sit in your room, the backyard bench, or even soak in the bath. The others will respect your space." Slowly, he stood, backpack in hand, and made his way to his new room without saying a word. Josh's room was small but cozy, with a twin bed, a dresser, and a small desk. He put down his backpack, took a deep breath, and slid under the covers. The quiet of the room was comforting, far away from the chaos, but still close enough to feel part of the house. After a few minutes, curiosity got the better of him. He peeked out the window at the backyard and spotted the pagoda by oak tree Paul had mentioned. Its thick branches and soft grass seemed like a perfect place to think. He made a mental note to try it tomorrow. Michael quietly knocked on the door before heading back to his own room. "Hey, Josh," he whispered. "If you want, I can show you the tree after breakfast tomorrow. Or we can just sit here and talk. Whatever you like." Josh nodded, managing a tiny smile. "Okay." Lacey passed by and gave him a gentle wave. "Good night, Josh. Don't worry about the noise. You'll get used to it." Even the twins stopped by for a moment. Emily whispered, "If you want company or just quiet, we'll respect it. Promise." Josh finally felt a small warmth inside. The house was still loud and strange, but he realized these kids weren't going to force him to be someone he wasn't. Later, as he lay in bed, Josh stared at the ceiling. The sounds of the house drifted around him, distant laughter, footsteps, the faint hum of the refrigerator. He thought about the oak tree, the bath, his new room. For the first time in a long while, he didn't feel like he had to hide. He didn't feel wrong. Marianne came by with the storybook asking if he wanted to join her with the twins in their room as she read them their bedtime story. He shook his head. Slowly, Josh drifted to sleep, his backpack tucked beside him. Knowing that tomorrow he would try again, a little step closer to feeling at home in this noisy, chaotic, welcoming family. The weekend arrived, no school. Josh lay in his bed, listening to the steady patter of rain against the window. He had already decided he liked the quiet. He liked his room. He liked being alone, tucked away from the chaos of the house. The bench under the pagoda by the oak tree would have been perfect on a sunny day, but today the rain made it off limits. Downstairs, laughter and clatter floated up from the kitchen. Emily and Nevaeh were flipping pancakes, and the smell of syrup and batter filled the air. Lacey and Hallie helped Paul set the table, carrying plates and napkins back and forth. Josh listened, hands tucked under his chin, relieved he didn't have to join. Meanwhile, the boys, Michael, Eli, Mark, and David, had built a fort under the dining room table. Blankets draped over chairs, pillows tucked around the edges. Their laughter and whispers bounced off the walls, filling the house with warmth and noise. Josh hugged his knees closer, thinking that he would never like this loud, busy household. This was too much. Too many people. Too many sounds. Too many feet. Then came a knock on his door. Josh froze. "Hey, Josh! You up?" Eli's voice called from the hallway. "Pancakes are ready." Josh hesitated, gripping his blanket. Eli pushed the door open slightly. "And, we made a fort under the table. You could, if you want, come join. You don't have to stay long, I promise." Josh peeked out, blinking at Eli's hopeful face. The fort looked cozy, a secret little world just for them, but his room still felt safer. "Come on," Eli said gently. Extending his hand, "It's just pancakes and blankets. Nobody will make you do anything. And the girls are making the best pancakes ever. I mean, they're kind of epic." Josh thought about it. He thought about the quiet of his room, and the smell of pancakes, and the fort, dry and sheltered from the rain. After a long pause, he finally nodded. "Okay," he whispered. Eli grinned. "Yes. You'll love it. I promise." Josh grabbed his socks and followed Eli down the stairs, careful but curious. As he stepped into the dining room, he saw the fort, the blankets, the boys' excited faces, and for the first time since arriving, he thought maybe a busy, loud house could feel kind of okay. Josh stepped into the dining room, eyes wide as he took in the fort under the table. Blankets draped over the chairs like castle walls, pillows stacked into cozy corners. Michael, Eli, Mark, and David peeked out from their hiding spots, grinning when they saw him. Eli waved him over. "Come on, Josh. You can sit right here." He patted an empty spot between himself and Michael. Josh hesitated, gripping the edge of the table. The room was noisy, laughter echoing off the walls, but something about the fort felt safe. Slowly, he crawled under the blankets and sat down, keeping his backpack on his lap like a shield. Michael leaned closer. "See? Not so bad, huh?" Josh nodded slightly, still quiet but curious. He watched as Eli tossed a pillow toward him. "Catch!" Josh stiffened, then, after a pause, let the pillow rest on his lap. He didn't throw it back, but he didn't push it away either. That small action was progress. Mark whispered something about a secret tunnel through the cushions, and David added, "You have to sneak past the dragon to get the cookies." Josh blinked, unsure if he should laugh. Then, just a little, he did, a quiet, soft laugh that made Michael grin. The fort was warm, cozy, and a little chaotic, but Josh began to realize it wasn't dangerous. It was just fun. And for the first time since arriving, he didn't feel like he needed to hide. In the kitchen, the smell of syrup and pancakes lingered. Lacey and Hallie carried plates to the table, and Emily and Nevaeh were still flipping pancakes with care. "Want some?" Eli called from the fort, holding a plate up through the blanket doorway. Josh hesitated, then accepted it. The pancakes were warm, sweet, and exactly what he needed. He took a bite, and the fort suddenly felt even more like a little world of his own. Michael whispered, "See, it's okay. Josh smiled, a real one this time, and nodded. Okay. The rain continued to patter against the windows outside, but inside the fort of blankets, Josh felt something he hadn't felt in a long time, that maybe this house, loud and crazy as it was, could also be home. After finishing his pancake, Josh stayed under the fort's blankets for a moment longer, listening to the rain tap softly against the windows. The sound was comforting, steady, predictable, and quieter than the chaos of the rest of the house. Michael leaned closer. Want me to show you around a bit? You don't have to follow anyone, just see the house at your own pace. Josh nodded, still gripping the edge of his plate. Slowly, he crawled out from under the blanket fort. Michael held the doorway open for him, and together they slipped into the hallway. Here's your room, Michael said, pointing down the hall. Josh peeked inside. It was small, neat, and exactly what he needed, a place where he could retreat whenever he wanted. Michael smiled. See? Quiet. Safe. All yours. Josh felt a small relief. Thanks, he whispered. Next, they walked past the twins' room. Emily and Nevaeh waved and held up a small box of crayons. If you ever want to draw, you can use these, Nevaeh said softly. Or not. Totally up to you. Josh nodded again, feeling something he hadn't expected, that no one here would push him to be someone he wasn't. Finally, Michael led him to the backyard. The rain had eased into a gentle drizzle, and the pagoda by oak tree stood tall and inviting. Its wide branches offered natural shelter, and the ground beneath was soft and damp, perfect for quiet reflection. There's the bench, Michael said, pointing to a sturdy wooden seat nestled under the tree. You can sit there if you want some space, or just watch the others play. Josh approached it slowly, testing the wood with his hand, then sitting down carefully. He let out a soft sigh. This felt good. Peaceful. Quiet. Safe. From the back door, Michael called, "We're gonna go back in soon, but this is yours anytime you want." Josh smiled faintly, feeling for the first time that maybe he could survive, maybe even enjoy, living in a big, noisy house. A house full of people who cared, even if it was louder than he liked. Josh stayed on the oak tree bench for a while, watching the rain turn into a light drizzle. He listened to the muffled laughter from the dining room, the faint clatter of the twins' dolls being rearranged, and the boys' whispers about their secret fort. After a few minutes, Eli approached quietly, holding a small toy car in his hands. "Hey, Josh," he said softly, sitting on the edge of the bench. "I thought you might like this. You can just look at it if you want, or play with me. Totally up to you." Josh hesitated, then reached out slowly. He picked up the car, turning it over in his hands. "It's nice," he said quietly. Michael appeared next, crouching down beside him. "See? No pressure. You can play, or just sit here. We'll be right here." Josh nodded, feeling a little braver. He rolled the car along the wooden bench, watching it move back and forth. A few minutes later, Hallie and Lacey came out with a small box of building blocks. "Hey, Josh, if you want, we can build something with you," Hallie said gently. "Or not. It's okay if you just watch." Josh looked at them, then at the car in his hands. He gave a tiny smile. "Maybe. I'll just watch for now." "Perfect," Lacey said. "That's how we all start." From inside the house, the twins called out, "Dinner's almost ready." Josh glanced at the house, at the fort under the table, at the twins waving hands. For the first time, he realized he didn't have to choose between quiet and being part of the family. He could take it slow, find his own space, his own pace, and still belong. Eli nudged him gently. "You're doing great, Josh. Just keep being you." Josh nodded, holding the toy car. For the first time, he felt like maybe this big, noisy, chaotic house wasn't so overwhelming after all. Back in the fort under the dining room table, Michael slid a pillow over beside him. After a while, he reached out and nudged the pillow toward Michael. Michael grinned. "Hey! Thanks. Want to help me make a secret tunnel over here?" Josh's eyes lit up slightly. "Okay," he whispered. The fort became a shared sanctuary, a place where Josh could feel safe and included without losing his quiet identity. And for the first time, he thought maybe he did belong in this big, noisy, wonderful house. That evening, after the fort had been tidied up, Josh quietly wandered toward the kitchen. Paul was stirring something on the stove, the warm smell of dinner filling the air. "Hey, buddy," Paul said, smiling. "How's it going?" Josh hesitated, then asked softly, Do the other kids like me?" His voice was barely above a whisper. "I mean, I see them all on the couch watching cartoons, and I don't know. I just feel like maybe I don't belong." Paul ruffled his hair gently. "Hey, buddy, you belong here. Just remember that." Josh nodded, still unsure, and padded quietly into the living room. The other kids were sprawled across the couch, laughing at a cartoon, sprawled over blankets and pillows. He chose the far end, sitting stiffly and hugging his knees. For a moment, he felt invisible, like the new kid who didn't belong. Then, something unexpected happened. Eli nudged Michael, and Michael nudged Mark. Lacey scooted over, Hallie adjusted a pillow, and the twins crawled onto the other side and scooted him gradually towards the middle, shifting and cuddling around him so that he was surrounded by warmth and familiarity. Josh blinked, stunned. He felt their arms brush against his, their laughter surrounding him, and for the first time, he really felt like he was part of something and that they actually cared about him. Mary Ann and Paul watched from the doorway, smiling softly. No words were needed, they knew that Josh had taken another step toward belonging, and that this simple gesture of acceptance meant the world to him. Josh leaned back into the huddle, a small, shy smile spreading across his face. For the first time, he felt at home in this big, noisy, chaotic, loving family. Over the next few days, Josh had tried to keep a low profile at school. But no matter how quietly he stayed in his corner of the playground, 3 boys from his class seemed determined to make his life miserable. They shoved him, snatched his lunch, and whispered cruel jokes. The teachers shrugged it off, calling it boys being boys, leaving Josh feeling small and powerless. The twins, Emily and Nevaeh, noticed from afar. They whispered to each other about the incidents but said nothing at first, keeping a careful watch. They were patient, waiting for the right moment to act. One evening, Josh wandered into the backyard, rain having cleared the air. He sat on the bench, watching the soft glow of the setting sun filter through the branches of the oak tree. Quiet. Peaceful. Just like he liked. But his thoughts returned to school, the pushing, the laughing, the feeling of being invisible. He clenched his fists softly, unsure of how to deal with it. Inside the house, Nevaeh had spoken with the other kids. She paced back and forth, determination in her eyes. "We can't just watch Josh get bullied," she said firmly. "He's our brother now. We need to do something. All of us." The other siblings, Michael, Eli, Mark, David, Lacey, Hallie, and Emily, nodded. They knew Nevaeh was right. They had a family now, and family protected each other. The following day, the siblings spread out across the playground, keeping Josh in their sight. They let him move freely, letting him appear to be alone, until the inevitable happened. The 3 bullies approached Josh, smirking and whispering cruel words. Josh's stomach sank, and he froze, unsure what to do. Then, one by one, his siblings moved in, forming a tight circle around him. Suddenly, 8 kids surrounded the bullies. The lead bully's confident smirk faltered. What's this?" Nevaeh stepped forward, her voice steady and sharp. "This is our brother. Leave him alone, or deal with us." The lead bully's face went pale. He stammered, tripped over his own feet, and nearly fell. The other two glanced at each other, unsure of what to do with 8 determined siblings staring them down, their resolve unshakable. Josh looked up at his siblings, eyes wide. Heart pounding. A warmth spread through him he had never felt at school before. This was real. This was family. They had his back. The lead bully backed away, muttering curses under his breath. The others followed. Quickly, glancing nervously at Nevaeh, whose stare alone commanded respect. Josh took a deep breath, feeling a strange combination of relief and pride. He glanced at his siblings, smiling softly. He realized then that the chaos of the house, the loud, messy, energetic, unpredictable family, wasn't something to fear. It was a safety net. A place where he could belong. For the first time, Josh felt truly part of something bigger than himself, a family that cared, fiercely and unconditionally. Josh trudged up the driveway, backpack slung over one shoulder, replaying the schoolyard scene in his mind. The 3 bullies weren't just gone, they'd left him alone, and for the first time, he had felt protected. Protected by a group of kids who weren't even his biological siblings, but who clearly considered him one of their own. As he entered the house, the familiar chaos greeted him, the smell of dinner simmering, laughter from the twins as they played with dolls in the living room, and the faint clatter of dishes being put away by Lacey and Hallie. Normally, this would have felt overwhelming, but today it felt safe. Warm. Home. Eli bounded over, his face lighting up. Hey, Josh! You okay? Josh nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. Yeah. I think so. Michael clapped him on the shoulder. Told you. You've got us. Josh's gaze drifted to the twins, who peeked out from behind the couch, grinning knowingly. Nevaeh gave him a subtle wink. Emily nudged him gently. Josh felt a sudden warmth, realizing all of them had watched over him, had stood up for him, and had welcomed him into their chaotic fold. Paul, entering from the kitchen with a pan of vegetables, called out, "How's my buddy doing?" Josh looked up and smiled genuinely this time. Good, he said. Really good. Dinner was loud, messy, and full of playful arguments over who got the last slice of bread or who poured the most syrup on the pancakes at dessert. Normally, Josh would have retreated to his room. But tonight, he stayed at the table, laughing softly at Eli's exaggerated complaints about Mark stealing his portion. After dinner, the kids sprawled across the living room, some on the couch, some on the floor, and some tucked into blankets. Josh found a comfortable spot near the twins, who had started telling a silly story about a dragon in the backyard. He listened quietly at first, then, slowly, began to add his own observations. Michael leaned over. Hey, you're getting into this. Josh smiled, a little shyly. Yeah, it's fun, he admitted. Marianne and Paul exchanged a glance from the doorway, both smiling softly. They had watched Josh come in hesitant, anxious, and unsure, and now he was laughing quietly with the siblings, his presence naturally folded into the chaos of the house. Josh realized something important, the noise, the mess, the endless energy of the kids, it wasn't something to fear. It was a sign of love, of belonging. He felt it in the way Michael had stood by him at school, in the way the twins had silently observed and waited for the right moment, and in the way every sibling had shifted on the couch just to include him. For the first time, Josh didn't just tolerate the chaos of the house. He embraced it, knowing that within it, he had a place. A real place. A family that cared. He settled back against the pillows, listening to the laughter and chatter, feeling the warmth of the house wrap around him. Quiet or chaos, he belonged here. Over the next few months, the house settled into a rhythm of chaos and warmth. Michael and Josh slowly found their place among the siblings, each day learning a little more about the loud, messy, unpredictable, but loving family they now called home. Michael became inseparable from Eli. The two boys shared jokes, homework sessions, and quiet moments under the table in the fort. Michael, who had once dreaded leaving for a foster home far away, now found comfort in knowing this house, full of siblings who teased, laughed, and sometimes argued, was his real home. Josh, on the other hand, moved more cautiously. He still cherished quiet time on the bench in the backyard or in his room, but the chaos no longer felt threatening. He began to participate in small ways, helping build forts, suggesting clever ideas for games, or quietly laughing at the twins' antics with their dolls. He started joining family meals more readily, sitting at the table with the others, even when the conversations grew loud. School remained a challenge, but Josh had his family's support. The bullying faded quickly once his siblings had stepped in, and the twins kept a watchful eye on the playground, making sure their new brother was safe. Pizza nights became a sacred ritual, an announcement of new bonds, laughter, and stories shared around the table. Whether celebrating a small victory or welcoming a new sibling, the kids gathered together, noisy and joyful. These nights strengthened Josh's confidence and Michael's sense of belonging. Gradually, Paul started taking the boys out for one-on-one activities, a burger here, a drive there, or quiet walks in the park. These moments built trust, connection, and a sense of stability, helping the two newest members of the family feel like they truly belonged. By the end of these months, both Michael and Josh had transformed. Michael was confident, comfortable, and fully integrated into the family's chaos and love. Josh, once hesitant and wary, had discovered that he could belong without losing himself. His quiet nature was respected, and yet he had begun to embrace the noise, laughter, and unpredictability of family life. Mary Ann and Paul watched it all with quiet pride, knowing that these months had set the foundation for something permanent. The home, once a place of tentative adjustment for Michael and Josh, had become a sanctuary of belonging, laughter, and trust. The time had come for the next step, the moment when the bonds formed over months of patience, love, and small victories would be recognized officially: adoption. Over the next few months, pizza nights became more than just a favorite meal. They became the family's ritual for sharing, decision-making, and inclusion. This was something Josh was not used to. Whenever there was a new child joining the household, or a big decision to make, Mary Ann and Paul called a family meeting. These meetings weren't lectures, they were conversations. Every voice was heard, and every feeling mattered. For children who had been through difficult experiences before arriving in this home, this was a powerful lesson: they belonged, and their thoughts counted. One evening, with pepperoni and cheese bubbling on the table, Mary Ann opened the discussion. "We need to talk about Michael and Josh. They've been part of our family for a while now, and soon we'll take the next step. But first, we want to hear from all of you." Nevaeh spoke first, confidence in her voice. "Michael is already our brother. He fits right in. And Josh, he's quiet, but he's one of us now. I want him to stay." Emily nodded. "We need to make sure Josh knows he can be himself here. No one will make fun of him, and he'll always have space to be quiet if he wants." Eli looked at Michael, then around the table at all the siblings. "I really like Michael being here. At first, I thought he'd only stay a short time, but now I want him to stay. And Josh too. I think we're all ready." The younger kids, Lacey, Hallie, Mark, and David, each added their thoughts, sharing excitement, encouragement, and reassurance. Mary Ann smiled. "Thank you, everyone. That's exactly what we hope to hear. Your voices matter. Decisions about our family, especially about new members, are made together." Paul raised his slice of pizza. "To family, and to welcoming these two into our hearts and home for good." Everyone cheered, clinking slices and laughing. Michael and Josh exchanged shy, happy glances. They had already felt the love and protection of this household, but hearing their siblings voice it so clearly made it real. In the quiet of their rooms, Michael and Josh wrote in their diaries that night, capturing their emotions in words and sketches. Michael's diary: "I used to think I'd have to leave soon. But now, I can't imagine leaving. I like this chaos. I like my brothers and sisters. I hope this is forever." Josh's diary: "I used to want quiet all the time. But now, even in the noise, I feel safe. They look out for me. They care. I belong here. Eli wrote about his brothers, Michael and Josh are ours. They fit in. Our family is crazy, but it works. I love this house. Nevaeh's pages reflected her protective instincts. Josh is brave. Even if he doesn't know it yet, we're all here for him. Always. These private reflections documented their growth and readiness, solidifying the emotional groundwork for adoption. The morning of the adoption was bright and calm, a gentle contrast to the usual chaos of the household. The kids gathered in the living room, clutching their diaries, full of anticipation. Paul began, his voice warm and steady. Today is very special. Michael, Josh, you've been part of this family for months. We've watched you grow, care for each other, and become part of this crazy, wonderful household. Mom knelt beside them. We're proud of you. And today, you are officially part of our family. Permanently. Michael's eyes widened. You mean, we don't have to ever leave? No, Paul said, ruffling his hair gently. You're home, buddy. Permanently. Josh looked down at the floor, then around at his siblings, Eli grinning, the twins holding hands, Lacey and Hallie watching expectantly. Slowly, a smile spread across his face. Really, he whispered. Really, Marianne said softly, brushing back his hair. The siblings erupted in cheers, crawling over to hug Michael and Josh tightly. Eli hugged Michael first. Welcome home, bro, he said. Then he turned to Josh. Welcome home, buddy. The twins clambered over, Emily whispering, you're ours now. Nevaeh added, forever. Josh finally looked around, eyes shining. The house, once overwhelming and loud, now felt perfectly right. The chaos wasn't frightening, it was love made visible. The parents watched quietly, proud. The diaries lay folded on the table, silent witnesses to the journey from uncertainty to belonging. For Michael and Josh, the legal papers were more than documents, they were proof that the family they had grown to trust, love, and depend on would never let them go. The house erupted in laughter and hugs, the kind only a big, loving, and chaotic family could create. And in that moment, Michael and Josh finally knew they were home. The days after Michael and Josh's adoption were full of laughter, chaos, and a sense of stability the kids had never experienced before. The house, always a whirlwind of activity, now felt complete in a way that was hard to put into words. Michael and Eli spent long afternoons building forts, racing toy cars, and tackling homework together. Michael's confidence soared, he no longer worried about leaving or being sent away. He belonged, fully, in this noisy, unpredictable, loving home. Josh continued to value his quiet spaces, the oak tree bench, his room, or a soaking bath, but he also began joining in more boldly. He helped the younger kids with puzzles, offered clever ideas for the fort, and even laughed along with the twin stories. His smiles became more frequent, and his trust in the family deepened. Pizza nights remained a cornerstone of family life. They were no longer just about food, they were celebrations of connection, discussion, and fun. Each meeting was an opportunity to check in with everyone, talk about school, chores, friendships, or how to help each other through tough days. These nights reminded all the kids, especially the newest ones, that their voices mattered and that they were part of the family's decision-making. The siblings' bonds grew in both playful and protective ways. The twins continued to watch out for Josh quietly, stepping in if someone teased or made him feel uncomfortable. Eli and Michael forged a brotherly camaraderie that was unshakable, while David and Mark often joined in the adventures, turning ordinary chores or backyard games into epic missions. Even ordinary routines became moments of connection. Breakfasts were filled with laughter and debates over who got the last piece of toast, bath time turned into storytelling, and bedtime was often a mix of whispered jokes, shared secrets, and the occasional sibling snuggling in for comfort. Paul continued his one-on-one outings with Michael and Josh, sometimes with burgers, sometimes with walks in the park. These moments were small but powerful, reinforcing trust, love, and the security that the kids needed to feel completely at home. Marianne, busy with her work at CPS, always made sure to carve out time for her kids individually, listening to their concerns, celebrating their victories, and helping them navigate the outside world. She also guided the family in discussing any challenges, reinforcing the household's foundation of inclusion and respect. Over these months, the house became a place where the kids could be themselves, whether loud or quiet, playful or reflective, adventurous or cautious. Michael and Josh were no longer newcomers, they were brothers who had weathered adjustment, uncertainty, and growth together with a family that truly cared. And as the siblings sprawled across the living room, building forts, laughing at cartoons, or simply sharing the quiet of a rainy afternoon, the house hummed with the comforting truth: this was their home, forever.